I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Doris Markland, and just like the mark the land, I always have to say that everywhere I go. They say, Mark Ward? I live in Norfolk, and I've lived there since 1963. My husband and I moved there because he was a cattle buyer. He at that time with the Hormel Company, and then he was hired to come to Norfolk and be the head cattle buyer for Midwestern beef over there. So for many, many years, my husband traveled eastern Nebraska to the farms that bought their cattle, and he knew a lot of people. When I go out and speak, a lot of people came up and say, Eugene's wife. I don't know if he came this far west, though. But I remember we moved to Norfolk on the day before Kennedy was assassinated. So it's always easy for me to remember that. Well, this is the book I'm going to tell you about. It's called Playing Life by Ear, Notes from 89 Years of Living, Learning, Laughing, Loving, and Believing. So it's filled with poetry and short, true stories. There's no fiction in it. Well, there's one little piece of fiction, but the rest is all true stories from my lifetime, from which I learned something. So people who've been reading the book tell me that they'll find an article they like, and then they'll go back to it later because it sets them thinking. And they want to kind of review what I was talking about. But I'd like to tell you how I came about putting the book together. 4 years ago, my husband died, and I realized that I lived down for 2 years in our big old house, and I realized I couldn't continue to do that. I couldn't take care of the lawns and the hedges and the basement, and goodness sakes, I had 2 kitchens and 4 bathrooms and 2 stories to take care of. I just couldn't do it. So in the process of getting ready to move, I had to go over everything in the house and decide what I could get rid of and to keep only what I absolutely needed, which was, I think, the hardest thing I ever did. How many of you have been through that? You know where I was coming from. And as I was going over the house, I kept running into little stories and poems that I had written through the years and had maybe tucked into a book or into a drawer. And when I put that together with what I had more recently written on my computer, I thought, gee, you know, that's a lot of stuff. I ought to be sharing that some way. So I started a blog. You know what a blog is? It's just my page. I call it my notebook. And I started putting my writings on there. And friends said, stop, you're just giving it away, put it in a book. And I had never thought of that before. So you have to understand that at my age, if I sent my book back east to the big publishers, I would not hear back in my lifetime. That's true, they get thousands of books and publish very few. So I went online to find a publisher to self-publish, and that's what a lot of people are doing now. And I finally chose a company called iUniverse, which is an arm of Random House. Now, where was I going with that? I was on a roll there for a minute.
Take your time.
Yeah,
I just told you to put it in book form instead of on a computer like that.
Well, yeah, but
Finding a publisher.
are any of you writers? Are you interested in knowing a little bit about self-publishing? If so, I'll take a little time to tell you about that. Years ago, there was such a thing as Vanity Press, and they would print anything that anyone sent them for a fee. And so people fear that that's what's going on now. It is now, self-publishing now is at a much higher level. I had to submit all my stuff and have it read over by editors, and they had to approve that they would publish my book. And then they worked with me through actually a few months I'm an old English teacher, so I thought, well, you know, they won't have to correct any of my stuff. What I didn't know about publishing, several things. They told me we go by the Chicago Manual. Anyone know what that is? Well, I didn't either. I thought, well, I'll just order one, and then I will be able to follow all their rules. Well, I found it cost several $100s to buy the Chicago Manual, so I gave that up. So I started sending my stuff, and then they started writing back and saying, we don't do it that way. For example, how many of you took typing in high school and learned 2 spaces after every sentence? No more. They don't do that anymore. Now it's 1 space. So I started out going to each sentence and moving it back. It was easier to simply retype the entire book, which I did. And some of it I had to retype more than once for various technical reasons. And then I wanted to have a few pictures in. That wasn't simple either. I had to be able to prove who took every picture and who owned the rights to it. Well, I had some rather old-fashioned things that fit with my stories that I wanted to use. And I tried to tell them the person who took that picture is long dead. But they said, sorry, we have to have on paper proof of who took it. So I still got some pictures in that were pretty good. So come the day finally that it was all approved, and I go to Hawaii every winter. We used to go there for vacation, and then we got old, we could stay longer. So this will be my 41st year to go to Hawaii. And now I stay through the whole winter. I have a good excuse to. So I was over there when my first copy came, and I just can't explain how exciting that is, to open a package and to see for the first time. That was the first I'd ever seen it. And can you believe how hard it was to choose a cover? And that's one of the most important things, very, very difficult to choose. I changed my mind a couple of times before I settled on this one. And this one I was able to buy from a company that's associated with iUniverse. They gave me pages and pages of book covers to look at, and I could choose one. I think it came with my plan, actually. You take out a plan for certain things. So, would you like to hear a few things from the book? Let me ask you first, which would you rather hear, things that are kind of funny or things that are thoughtful? Some of each? Do I have any old people in the room?
I told you I'd be the youngest. This is younger.
I think I'm the oldest.
One younger.
Anybody want to beat me? I think I'm the oldest one. So listen to your elders. Let's now look at my notes and see what I forgot to say that I intended to say. I'd like to start out by reading a piece of prose. That's the first article in the book. And some of you will understand why this was meaningful to me, because some of you are almost old. This I call Rain on My Parade, Please. It comes quickly, gray clouds bubbling up on the horizon, a sudden wind, and then an eerie hush that stills the birds, those that haven't headed south. I step outside to feel the first large splats of rain, and then back into the shelter of the garage to watch the force build. Straight down at first, the drops become silvery streams, slanting now in sheets that strike and power wash the driveway, then turn tame and curl in rivers down the street, taking flaky autumn leaves and any last hint of summer. I stood in the doorway, thrilled, breathing in the delicious scent of nature's shower, shivering a little, but not from the cold. I'm reliving one of the strongest memories of my childhood in the 30s, the dry years, when rain was so desperately needed in the Midwest. Farmers watched the sky day by day, shaking their heads when rogue clouds built and then frayed away, one wisp at a time. leaving us still with the plague of red dust that wasn't even ours. But then came a day when the sky grew angry, when streaks of lightning came. The family gathered on the lawn, unbelieving, then rejoicing in the first raindrop, laughing and running in circles, soaked to the skin as it began to pour. I had never seen my parents so happy. The feeling of those moments registered with me as deliverance, the opening of a window of hope. Rain meant relief from the heat. It meant prosperity for the crops. It meant a cleansing of the lawns, the roads, the atmosphere, and the soul. From then on, mental images of certain rainy days were captured and stored in my mind as special. Picture. On a rainy day, I could play outside in my oldest clothes, squeezing mud between bare toes, running into new ponds in the driveway, deep lakes in the hollows of the lawn, laughing, rain slicking my hair and streaming down the length of me. Click. Picture. My fiancé home from the war, arriving unexpectedly to take me to work. He comes to the door with an umbrella and a large bouquet of lilacs, covered with droplets and smelling like heaven. We dash through the rain, holding hands. Picture. My son at 5, in yellow slicker and hat, turns to wave goodbye as he trudges off to kindergarten, sloshing through September puddles, grinning with pride in his new independence. Click. Every picture that I saved is there in my permanent hard drive, and on rainy days I bring them up and look at them. It's a nice feeling. Other pictures that didn't turn out so good, like the time I ran out of gas on the freeway in the middle of a storm, or the time the sky poured on my yard sale, those were not keepers, and eventually I deleted them. I remember a cartoon character saying, "A rainy day is a good time to put on some sad music, drink hot tea, and look out the window. It is also a good time to clean out a closet, read a good book, simmer a stew, or just do nothing. It's raining. You must stay in, unless you must go to work in the rain, and that can be promising too. I think of all the movies in which the star met someone interesting in a downpour on his way to work, or danced down the street with his umbrella. Remember that? Spring rain may be refreshing, but fall rain comes with subtle colors and a distinctive mood. I'd call the color golden. Think wet leaves and harvest moon. I'd call the mood pensive. One is more likely to go in than out when rain is streaming on the glass. Soft and sentimental as it may be, autumn rain must be the instrument, together with the wind, that strips October's trees of their last dangling leaves, bearing limbs to reach against the background of November's pink and gray sunsets. Soon no more rain, but maybe lots of snow. We'll hunker down until it rains again. I love the rain. My children laugh if they're not around me very often because they live in Texas, California, and Florida. But when they are around me, if it starts to look like rain, they start looking at each other. And the minute the first drops come down, I say, "Oh, I love it when it rains." And they laugh. That's what they were waiting for. And they are telling me they are quite sure it will rain on the day of my funeral. I'll see that. The poetry that I wrote years ago is, I would call, old-fashioned poetry. And I didn't change a bit of it because I wanted to publish it the way I wrote it. Now, in those days, if you remember, Every line started with a capital letter. And the lines rhyme. Don't rhyme much anymore.
No.
So, so I didn't change a thing on those. And you know, if I took my poetry and went to a reading at the university, I would be kicked out in a minute. I can write some free verse, but you know, I like the way I write. So let me share. Now these are some really old ones that I did write many years ago. How many of you either grew up or live on a farm? Good, we're of the same family then. This is written about that, and it's called The Round Table. Did you have a round table in your farmhouse? A big old oak round table? Okay. Back on the farm in Iowa, our chalice was the coffee cup. And every day at 10 and 4, the pot was perked to fill it up. Then freshly frosted cakes were cut, and summer's jams and jellies spread, without a thought of calories, on yeasty loaves of good warm bread. True feelings passed with perfect ease, along with chunks of longhorn cheese, and tension melted into cheer with Arthur there, with Guinevere, and any knight who happened by and smelled the cinnamon of pie. When winter ringed us in with snow, when harvest days were cruel and hot, we stopped our work at 10 and 4 to gather round the coffee pot, to eat, to talk, and laugh a lot, in harmony, our Camelot. Now, would you have changed that?
No.
Interestingly, there were 3 farms around ours. This is over in the middle of Iowa. And 2 of those farms were owned by a family whose last name was Knight, K-N-I-G-H-T. So that poem had double meaning for us. How many of you remember snow vacations?
Oh, sure.
When you were in school? I remember mornings when the window panes were white, with snow that fell and frosted into crystals overnight. And Mother calling up the stairs, "There'll be no school today." And then the rush to all decide what we should do and play. First, I'm sure there were some chores, and then began the fun. Rook was great, and authors too. But when those games were won, we set up for Monopoly, a game we loved to play. And it's well named because it did monopolize our day. We popped some corn, and as we munched, the scent began to rise of peanut butter fudge our mom had made for a surprise. Oh, what carefree hours we spent because we didn't know. When we grew up, we'd be the ones to shovel all the snow. And sometimes I would just write a short, little more serious poem about something I saw, and this one is called Afterglow. Through the kitchen window, I watched the sun go down and cast its rosy shadow on the western edge of town. It streaked the sky with lavender, then winked a golden eye before it slipped in silence from a purple-painted sky. And I thought for just a moment in the softly fading light, now wasn't that a lovely way for God to say goodnight? I write about children, grandchildren, grandmothers, and I'll read a few of those poems for you. This one is called Grandchildren. How many have grandchildren? Just about everybody. Grandchildren, I want them near when they are small, when their eyes are full of wonder and they think with their hearts, when they are totally honest and remember everything that's said to them just as it was said, right? I want them near when they are trusting, when they take my hand and walk into adventure without question, when my lap is their comfort, my home is their castle, and I am ageless and wonderful. Can you relate to that?
Yeah.
Here's one about a 2-year-old. The testy 2-year-old. A 2-year-old in overalls with band-aids and with bruises. Who can know how hard he works, what energy he uses? Up and down and in and out from one place to another, he pulls his toys to keep within the aura of his mother. He turns the faucet, pokes the cat, shoves tinker toys in places, falls off his trike, invents a hike to look for friendly faces. Give him room, the 2-year-old, in jelly and pajamas. He only learns by testing, faucets, cats, and folks, and grandmas. How many are a great-grandma? Okay. This could apply to great-grandpas, too. And the grandmother one before could apply to grandfathers, too. Great-grandma, she keeps her peace and watches from the sidelines all the others doing what she did when she was star, when she was coach, when she was coach's coach. Sometimes she sees the play that's needed, cheers no matter what they choose, posts their wins on fridges, and empathizes sadly when they lose. But Grandma shuts her mouth and shuts her eyes from time to time to hold a little conference with the players in her mind. Can you relate to that? You know what I have found as a great-grandmother, to step back and let my daughter, grandmother. Great-grandmother tends to her knitting in the corner. Stays out of the way. And I found I don't make as good a pies as I used to, and that's my good excuse. Here's a short prose piece that, this one, some of these things have been published. This one happened to be in the Christian Science Monitor, and it's called Merrily We'd Roll Along. You know what more families need, what more nations need, and maybe what the United Nations needs. People like my friend Mary Lee. Widowed young, Mary Lee raised 4 children by herself and very well. I often wondered how she did it without a father to discipline. For instance, I once asked her, what did you do when the kids came screaming to you, bloodied and bawling, each blaming another for starting the fracas? Oh, that was easy, she said. I sat them down around the dining room table with tablets and pencils, and I said, this is very serious. We must get to the bottom of this. Then, looking around the table at each one, Mary Lee said in her very serious voice, you are to write what happened from the very beginning, telling who said what and who did what. Leave out not a single detail, as I will need all of the facts before I decide who must be punished. After admonishing no talking, she left the room and went about her day. It worked, she told me. The wonderful peace of silence fell upon the house, and when she peeked into the dining room 10 minutes later, it was always empty. Mary Lee is still my good friend, and she's also 90. You get to thinking about time. I don't know if it's because I'm older that I'm so curious about how time could go so fast. Do you feel like time is just whizzing you through? Well, I attempted to write about that in just a few paragraphs about time. The clock doesn't slow down when we do. Those crazy numbers just click away in the same old circle at the same old pace. We say time goes faster when we're having fun. Yet we say time goes faster as we grow older. Is that fun? Time seems to go faster when we're busy. Time goes slower when we are bored. So explain why time goes faster now that I'm not so busy. Many people have put forth scientific theories regarding how our brains record our experience and give us our concept of time. One simple explanation is that a day in the life of a small child is long in proportion to the time he has spent on earth. So that explains why a day in my life now is so short. I have been a child and I have been a senior. And I'd say that while I used to run and play every day for about 96 hours, I now get up, sneeze, and go back to bed. Thanksgiving falls a few days after the 4th of July. Not to be discouraged, it's like money. When we have a lot of it and a source of income, we may be tempted to spend without thought, without plan, because there will always be more. When money is scarce, we begin to realize our part in the scheme of things. Nothing is more precious than time. It is all we have. Perhaps realizing that is one of the major lessons in life. And there's no such thing as a lesson failed. It is always a lesson learned. As we say, everything comes in time. Do you remember the Saturday Evening Post as it was back then? They still publish it. It's not quite the same. Remember the covers that used to be on there, Norman Rockwell?
Yeah.
And how excited we'd be to see that magazine. So I wrote about that one day and I called it Saturday Evening Postings. Maybe we all need someone to idolize at times. The one I idolized for years was Richard Armour. He was a writer of light verse, the one who wrote things like, "Shake and shake the ketchup bottle, some will come and then a lotto." And this one, which is so apt today. Politics, it seems to me, for years or all too long, has been concerned with right or left instead of right or wrong. True today, isn't it?
Yeah.
The only periodicals I saw as a child were farming magazines. I had other interests. And when we went to visit my grandparents, I made a beeline for the oak library table in the front hall and grabbed the Saturday Evening Post before my brother did. I would plop down on the living room carpet, open the magazine, and flip to the page called Postscripts. And then I'd look for Richard Armour, and I'd almost always find him there. He was well educated, a college professor, a writer of books, but I think he was best known, like Ogden Nash, for writing funny verses. Another of his best remembered was this one. "Nothing attracts the mustard from wieners as much as the slacks just back from the cleaners." Although I did some writing through my adult years, in particular writing verse for Hallmark cards and other greeting companies, I was well into my later years before I dared to try to do what Richard Armour did. A lot of my attempts ended up in the wastebasket, but a few found their way by some miracle of luck to the very page where I once found my idol, postscript page in the Saturday Evening Post. It was almost like coming home. I'll read you some of those. Light verse is very difficult to write, and you don't find many people writing it. It always has to be very short. It has to have a specific point to it, and humor, and get to it quickly. Let's see if I did. This one is called Wait. In waiting rooms, I'm often vexed when I am not the one who's next, unless I'm there to get a shot, and then I'm very glad I'm not. The workout. Exercise to stay in shape is advice that I'm really in doubt of. The reason I'm here should be perfectly clear. I have a shape that I want to work out of. Counterpoint. I wrote this as I went through the checkout line in Lou's grocery store in Norfolk. Counterpoint. Approaching, I gotta use my hands for this. Approaching the counter I unload my items and I do the talking today. Flashing my visa and palming a 20. Paper or plastic, I say. Think about that for a minute. Once in a while, I write on purpose an absolutely stupid, silly poem. And those are the ones people ask me for a copy of. I had a lot of people ask for this one, truly. It's called Pocket Please, Pleas. I'll ask you first. Have you noticed in the last few years it's hard to find clothes with pockets in them?
Yes.
Okay, then you'll understand. These days when I'm shopping, I notice, and sadly, the loss of a feature we're needing so badly. We've outgrown the eras of hankies and lockets, but never our penchant for generous pockets. We like them in blouses, we like them in shirts, we like them in slacks, and we like them in skirts. We need them for tissues, we need them for dimes, we need them for hands in the most awkward times. We need them for keys so they'll never get lost. We need them for records of what something cost. As we need the science it takes to make rockets, we need the return of the folks who make pockets. So these lines are written to beg the designers, please honor the wishes of pocketless whiners. We know you need profits, we know you watch cost, but consider, without us, your business is lost.